Good evening, everyone. My name is Todd Scholl. I serve as the lead learner for the SCEA Center for Educator Wellness and Learning. We call ourselves CEWL. These are our fancy new cool duds, CEWL. And here's the website right here, cewl.us. That's cool.us. And you can check out all the resources we have there to support the inner and outer lives of educators. We have all the live streams we do, all the events that we do, all the things we're doing with our induction teachers led by Dr. Marcella Weinsnyder, all the resources for our early career educators, all available on the CEWL website at cool.us. And of course, I would be remiss to not mention our partner, the South Carolina Education Association. And if you're interested in joining our movement, please go to their website at jointhescea.org, where you can join and become a member of your local, state, and national associations. The NEA is our mothership, and the SCEA is the state affiliate for the NEA. And NEA has incredible benefits because there's over 3 million members nationwide. Part of that, the largest labor union in the United States of America. We're really proud to be an affiliate. And of course, we advocate at the local level. So we have locals in Greenville and Charleston and Horry, all over the state. So we encourage you to consider being a part of our movement if you aren't already. So tonight, we are going to be talking about advocacy again. And when I came to work at the SCEA, this is one of the first people that I wanted to meet with and talk with, because she has been a really big vocal leader for public schools in South Carolina. She was born in Sumter and raised in Columbia. She's currently an adjunct professor at the College of Charleston with a Master of Education in Teaching, Learning, and Advocacy program. She started her career as a teacher at Goose Creek High School for 12 years, establishing community-driven opportunities that bridge the gap between the school and the communities it served, with a focus on service learning at the core. She joined the district office to serve as a teacher evaluator, coach, and mentor to novice and experienced educators. After 6 years of serving within the district's administration, she returned to the classroom at North Charleston High School, and the following year was recognized as a top 5 Teacher of the Year finalist for Charleston County Schools in 2020. Returning to Berkeley County, she served at Cane Bay High School as an ELA teacher before resigning this past January 2024, to focus more on her own children and family, particularly her son, who's on the autism spectrum. She currently resides in Charleston area with her husband, Matt, and their 2 children, Mira and Maz, and their pup, Pearl. So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope that you will help me welcome Mev McIntosh. Mev, how are you doing tonight?
Hey, good evening, Todd. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's great to have you. So I hope that folks, as they watch tonight, will be willing to post comments and questions. So folks who are just tuning in, if you just want to say hello, please do that. We want this to be a really interactive session, but let's just start with sort of your backstory. I know you were really influenced by your parents, and how you grew up as you went into education. Maybe start there. Let's start about how Mev McIntosh became an educator.
Absolutely. I'll try to squeeze it into an hour or less, but I just want to start by saying thank you for this opportunity, Todd. I also admire you and your work as well. So we just really appreciate you helping to be a voice for all of us in the education community and giving us that opportunity to speak and share our stories. So just to start off a little bit about my family ancestry, my family history. My parents immigrated to this country in 1971 from India. My father, he was really looking for and chasing the American dream. In fact, when he was a child, he talks about being a teenager and going to the Russian embassy and then also going to the American embassy because he wanted to learn more about capitalism, and he wanted to learn more about just different opportunities out in the world. So he did. He took that leap of faith. He came to America. But you know, America is definitely a land of opportunity, but you have to work really hard. And when you're met with challenges, you have to face them head on. And so the first challenge that my father faced, he unfortunately was not able to pursue his dream. He wanted to become a dentist, and that opportunity did not happen for him. And so that's why I want to start with this title of the accidental advocate. My father accidentally fell into advocacy, kind of in a response to his, well, what do I do next? I have this family to take care of. So dad moved us from New York to South Carolina. He had a sister there. And so it was a big, you know, culture shock, not only coming from India to New York City, but then also to a tiny little town, Sumter. And mind you, this was, you know, the early 70s going into all the way into the mid 90s is when we lived in the Sumter area. So, you know, dad actually took up a position with the Watery Town Council. And one of the images that I have here for folks to see is actually a letter that a principal from a school in Somerton, South Carolina, back in 1977, sent my father to say thank you for teaching our children and informing our children of the importance of good dental hygiene. So part of my dad's job with the Watery Community Action and the town council was to help provide free dental services for children and families in need. And so here's my dad driving around the rural parts of South Carolina. Of course, that's dad before he came to America. But dad's driving around in his 1972 Pinto throughout the areas, the rural areas of South Carolina, you know, and that being a minority within a rural population. But it was his job to raise funds and make connections and to get the support needed so that children and students could not only attend school, but attend school with pride. One of the stories my dad shared with me was how much it meant for a teenage girl to be able to smile again because of something so simple that we take for granted. So that's a little part about my dad's experience as an advocate. And then on my mom's side of the family, my mom is actually, our ancestry is Afghani. And so there's a photo in there of my ancestors,
Is that
mother's side. That's actually my mom and dad
mom and dad? Okay.
photo. Yeah,
So this maybe is the one.
that's the one, Todd. Thanks. Yep. So this is actually our ancestors that moved from Afghanistan to India mainly for educational opportunities. And so many of my mom's family members were originally farmers and some even nomads, but they went into education in the early 1900s. And my grandfather, actually, on my maternal side, was the dean of economics at Osmania University in Hyderabad. And I share all that because, Todd, it took me such a long time to realize that service and education and helping others to see a better future and to see something better for themselves. It took me a long time to realize that that was in my blood already.
Yeah.
And so I share that with a lot of pride.
Yeah. I'm going to bring up one of the other pictures. This one too. Is this your father? Or is
This is my grandfather. Actually, this is my
Okay.
grandfather, and he was the dean of economics at Osmania University. His education included traveling to Germany and other parts of Europe. But the other thing I want to point out about my grandfather is not only was he a scholar, was he a professor, was he a leader, but he also was very observant with his students and the people that he worked with, and he noted that he had students that weren't coming to class regularly, and he did a little investigating to find out. Well, he came to find out that one of his students had recently lost both of their parents, and he was responsible for two little sisters. My grandfather took it upon himself with four daughters in the house to bring in this family of three, and the son and the daughters both not only finished school, but they all went on to go into professional careers in law and medicine. And so when we talk about that ripple effect, when we talk about the simple the simplicity of opening a door or helping someone out, to see what that ripple effect is, just still really resonates with me today.
Yeah. So that's interesting. So your one side of your family is Afghani, and the other side is from India. But the Afghani family went to India. Is that what I want? Okay. And
Correct. Mhm.
and what type of stories did you hear? As I think Americans know so little about the history of those regions. We just have stereotypes in our head. I've read Red Kite Runner and Thousand Splendid Suns. And it was actually shocking that somebody said that book ought to be banned. But anyway, I don't want to digress into that. I just think it's the history of Afghanistan. Um, is really interesting, and there's a powerful story, I think, in that history that Americans need to understand. Can you talk a little bit about the history of Afghanistan, and how America's relationship with both Afghanistan and India has impacted sort of how you view the world?
Sure. I'll share with you as much as I know and I've read. And as far as the history of Afghanistan, I always recall my mom sharing with me when she would pull up some of these pictures of these stories, and she would just say, our people are warriors. We are warriors. We fight. We persist. We get the job done. And so I think that when we think about more of the similarities than the differences between Afghanistan and America, is that we continue to have this passion, this drive for what we want, and what we want is something better. Even with my own ancestors, they were not very well off. They were nomads and farmers, and living off the land, which many people did back in that time. But they also knew that there was something bigger and better, and there was something that they could have a part of. And so that's what led to that drive to say, you know what, let's see what else is out there. Let's go and explore. And with India being so close by, that was kind of the natural place to go. In addition to, there was the influence of the British with the
Right.
education system in India, and so for many people that may be seen as a burden, but at the same time too, it was also a blessing in many ways. It gave my mom's family the opportunity to grow and thrive, mainly through the education field. It gave my father's family an opportunity to grow and thrive. My grandfather on my father's side was actually a high court judge in the same hometown in Hyderabad, and he was given an opportunity to go move to London and work with the British government. And he said, no, I want to build what I should be building here in my home country, and that's India. And so I think that the commonalities that we see with cultures that we may view as different, it really is, getting back to the core of what we know and value and love so much. And that is that passion, that persistence, and that knowledge that there is something better and can be something better out there. And that seeking that opportunity for it is what's so important.
So they moved from Afghanistan to India after the
Mhm.
end of the British occupation. Is that correct? Okay. So how did the sort of the the world for people in India, from what you've been told, how did it change after the British left, sort of ceremoniously left, and then there was this tension between the Muslim and Hindu populations, and I have a very surface level understanding of this, but there was this tension, and then Pakistan was created. My understanding out of that, for the Muslim population, and uh, and of course Gandhi was instrumental in trying to make peace between these two sides. What how did that sort of that turning away from British occupation and the sort of schism that was created, how did that impact you and your family, and also the influence of someone like Gandhi? How did that then influence your family?
I think it was my dad who, as a child, as a toddler, grew up in that, British occupied India. It was my mom who got to see and experience the post occupied India. And so in the time that my mom and her sisters were growing up, it was a very it was a very exciting time. It was a time of pioneering. Because now we finally have this opportunity to own and claim what's ours after so long with this colonization. And I will also say that the British influence was not just on education; it was on culture. It was on those values. Even to this day, if you go to India, you are considered more beautiful if you are more fair, and that is such a like
Yeah.
European kind of British mentality to have. Whereas if you go to other parts of the world, melanin is considered beautiful. So I think that when you really look at like my dad's experience growing up in India, and then looking at my mom's experience growing up in India, they definitely had some different shifts that they were experiencing as well. And for me growing up and just hearing some of the stories, like my dad was a big collector of National Geographic magazines, and I used to have so many of those in my classroom. And the fun part, Todd, is to always watch the kids open up a Nat Geo, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we did have one Nat Geo that still had East Pakistan and West Pakistan in its map. So it just goes to show like how quickly that history can evolve and change on us, even within a generation.
Yeah. I think there's something to say about like I think about how I got into advocacy, how you got into advocacy, and I think there is something about seeing like sort of this generational overcoming of certain things or circumstances, or having to move into a new situation and learn how to uh, accept the fact that the culture that you're in is vastly different than what you've come from, and figure that all out. And I think it probably creates a sense of empathy that you have that really does help you be an effective advocate. Would you say that How would you say the role of empathy, the role of sort of having gone through these experiences plays out now as you attempt to be an advocate here in South Carolina?
Um, I can't say that I know and have had everyone's experiences. I think
Right.
that's, almost impossible to do. But at least having having that knowledge and knowing what it felt like growing up here in America, growing up in South Carolina, growing up in Sumter and Irmo, even living here in Charleston, even with the large city it is. uh, there's always that feeling of being the outsider.
Right.
There's always that feeling of kind of being stuck between a rock and a hard place. I remember when we took our daughter to New York City, we were sightseeing, and we went to Ellis Island, and there was a display that said the go in betweens, and that phrase just really resonated with me, Todd, because like that entire description, just the exhibit alone was like, that's me.
Right.
That's me. That's kind of where I am right now. And you learn to understand it, you learn to navigate it, and in navigating it, it's definitely not an easy task. And I also want to point out here, not only am I navigating being first generation Indian American, but I'm also doing it in the deep red South.
Right.
And so I think that for my dad, that was definitely a challenge. He was, and at times to his face, was called an alien. Even as he was traveling the roads and serving the communities of people who had little to no understanding of his own background. So I think that, it definitely does give me a deeper understanding of perspective and where others are coming from. But I also don't want to say that it is any better than anyone else's experience.
But do
It's
you
just
think
a
do you
different
think that
experience.
it helped cultivate sort of a courage? Because I think advocacy requires a lot of courage. It requires your willingness to step up and say things that need to be said, knowing that you're gonna get hit hammered by somebody, or and it could be somebody you don't even expect. Like anytime folks stand up in this advocacy space, you have people that you're even trying to advocate for who will tell you to sit down. And so talk about that, like how your experiences, your family experiences, but also cultivated this capacity to have that courage to advocate.
So my mom was barely 20 years old. She was pregnant with my sister. She was getting on her first plane ride ever. She was leaving her entire family behind. And I often think about, like, what was happening in my mom's mind to
Mhm.
help her get through that experience. And and I have to give her so much credit. Um, I cannot imagine what that experience was like for her, because when she landed in LaGuardia, and literally her first steps on American soil, um, she sees an argument taking place between a man and a woman. And she just stops, like she's kind of frozen because she's never seen anything like this before, and she's in this foreign place.
Yeah.
And my dad says to her, "Yeah, let's keep moving," and kind of like, moves her along. It's in times like that where, and I still do get anxious and nervous and concerned about, um, my message and how it will be received, and
Right.
and the response behind it. There's always that. And that's natural. That's part of our emotions as humans, and I think that's
Mhm.
okay to have that. Um, but I also think about the fact that the people that came before me sacrificed so much. My mom
Yeah.
sacrificed so much.
Right.
Um, my ancestors who left behind a world that they knew for India, sacrificed so much. And so, um, why can't I do the same by
Yeah.
taking that mic, or speaking up for the student whose parents aren't there because the parents have abandoned them?
Mhm.
I think that, you know, one thing that my dad always taught me was, there's always going to be someone better off than you, Mevish, but there's always going to be someone worse off than you. And how are you going to help that? How are you going to help fix that? And so those are the things that really stuck with me over the years. And it took me time to understand those things.
Let's look at this quote that you asked me to have ready. So this Rumi quote, who I love, Rumi. Go to the well of love deep inside each of us. Be generous and grateful. What does this mean to you?
So, first of all, that's my dad's handwriting. And I always am just, even to this day, just always in awe of his penmanship. It was beautiful, it was exquisite, and even until his very, near the end, he still had just this beautiful handwriting. But that quote, that Rumi quote, is essentially saying, live your life to the fullest, live your life to the fullest, and continue to seek out what you're finding the answers to. And we may not always it may not always be the path we've uh, thought we would have,
Right.
like my dad, and even me. But I think that it's important for us to remember that there's so much more that can be done when we love and support and listen, and seek to understand. That's one thing that I always tried to impart on my students is seek first to understand, than to be understood. You have to take that time to really observe, listen, and reflect. But at the same time, too, John Lewis taught me, and I had the opportunity to sit front center stage with him in DC, thanks to Aaron Gruwell and the Freedom Writers experience. He said, keep getting into that good trouble. You have to keep getting into that good trouble.
I hear the picture here.
Yeah, there's me and Miss G. That was actually kind of a dark time in my teaching career, and I got a call from the Freedom Writers Foundation with an opportunity to do training with Miss G, and what an incredible experience. And sad to say that the Freedom Writers Diary is a text that is on banned book lists.
Yeah, which is crazy. So we kind of alluded to this earlier, and it caught my ear. One of the things that I find that I struggle with personally in this advocacy space is getting angry, um, and then I feel like what you said, which is it's okay to be angry. Like I don't want to shame myself for feeling angry, but I also don't want to lead with that. I don't want to be led by anger. I mean, I think it's great. It's okay to feel it, and but I want to be led. Similar to the quote, I want to be led by love and compassion and understanding and grace. How do you balance that out? Because I'm sure when you pay close enough attention, there's a lot to get angry about. How do you balance that anger and then kind of recommit and rebalance yourself to ensure that you're not being swept away in the frustration and the feelings of animosity towards people who are harming uh, kids and students? I mean, students and teachers.
I would like to say there's a balance, but as of lately, I do not think there's one, and that's simply because the amount of work and advocacy and information that needs to be shared. But in terms of finding that balance, it is okay to be angry, but the biggest question is what do you plan to do with that anger? Is it going to be productive? Is it going to be destructive? And I think it's so easy, and we're so quick to want to be destructive because we are angry, and that just inner rage, frustration, whatever that core emotion is, you want to act upon it. But we also have to keep in mind that the same social emotional skills that we teach our children, take five, ask yourself 3 questions before you do, X, Y, or Z, you know, and as adults, we also have the ability to say, okay, I'm pissed. What am I going to do about it? I can do nothing. I can, do something destructive, or I can do something productive. And I think that looking at what is productive in that sense is what's going to help you move that anger into something that's going to actually make some kind of a difference. And when I say make a difference, that difference, it takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. And
Yep.
so, you and I have been doing this work for some time, Todd. I accidentally fell upon this advocacy because in 2003, the year that I was supposed to get married, I was pulled into a room by my principal with about 7 or 8 other teachers and told that because we were recent hires that we may not have a job next year. So I panicked, and I think it was about 3 weeks later we had a group of teachers that were using their spring break to go up to Columbia and to raise some cane over this. And so I said, yeah, I'll join you guys. And I believe that was my first visit, and that made front page news. Um, I think that, continuing to work on that anger with that productive response is also what's key too. And the other thing, um, if you don't have a tribe that you can count on and uh, reach out to when you need it, when you are really angry, when you are really, ready to pop off some heads. I know I have my tribe, and it's a group of 5 ladies on my text that I can reach out to and say, and they will respond back and say, we got you, but we're going to do something about it.
Right. So this is gonna be a big question. Um, you said you've been, and we have been doing this for a while. I've been in public education since '95 in South Carolina, um, and it's taken me a while. It took me probably 10 to 15 years to even begin to have an understanding of what's happening in the state politically and for teachers and the whole state of advocacy. In your experience, what is your diagnosis for how we got into the situation that we're in, and how do we get out?
Huh. Um, well, just from my observation and my experience in South Carolina, I started teaching in 2001, and so seeing a good like 20 years of leadership in this state. Um, it's very clear that the same folks who are saying reform needs to happen are the same folks who had opportunities in the past 20 years to really make some true reform happen.
Right.
And even with me posing that same question to Ellen Weaver during one of her stump campaign rallies, it was lost on her. It was lost on her that leadership, her own party leadership, has really failed to address the growing issues in education in South Carolina. Um, when I started teaching, I did have a better work life balance. And then when I left the classroom, there was very little balance. And that's no way for us to retain teachers. That's no way for us to recruit teachers. Um, and I think that as far as continuing our work, um, it's not just it doesn't have to be just us, Todd. It doesn't have to just be educators. Um, it needs to be parents. It needs to be students. It needs to be the stakeholders as well.
Right.
And I'm willing to bet if most stakeholders knew just the typical day of a teacher these days compared to 5 years ago, um, they would be ready to do something to help that teacher out.
Right.
And I think that's what's really important for people to remember is that, you know, so many people out there can complain about the issues in education, but to really roll up your sleeves and do the work and to stay committed to doing the work, um, that's rare. And I think that the more that we continue to change just the things we're doing in education without really giving it true thought, um, it will eventually appear and seem like to the next generation of potential teachers that, oh well, what's happening this year is not going to happen next year. And so when there's no consistency in a profession, in a workday, um, and it mainly focuses on being overworked,
Yeah.
then that right there is the real problem that our lawmakers are really failing to address.
So is some of it intentional? Is some of the sort of the degradation of the profession in terms of the pay not keeping up with inflation, for as an example, like we had to take pay cuts or at least didn't have pay raises in like 08, 09, 10, and that whole era during that recession. And then you had and just increased accountability forced down onto the teachers, um, and a whole host of initiatives, and then a sort of stripping of autonomy. I think, and I think that was a result of people becoming so focused on testing that, and trying to manipulate all the variables or keep all the variables, constant, so that, like, if there's any testing issue, they know they can say, well, that was definitely the quality of the teacher, not the program, or not the variations in what we allowed teachers to do. So they tried to do everything, get everybody on the same page, almost literally, scripted curricula, making sure that benchmarks, and going in and making sure all the teachers are doing pretty much the same thing. And now we see reports where English teachers, and you're an English teacher, you're not even allowed to really use novels anymore. You're taking books out of the schools that represent diverse backgrounds. And then on top of this, now you have this whole PragerU thing where you're trying to, there's this weird projection thing. It's like being a profession that's been indicted, or, by some folks, that in that we're indoctrinating kids, and then you have actual indoctrination happening by the people accusing teachers of indoctrinating kids. It's just, it feels intentional at this point. And I wonder what your perception of that is. You feel it's intentional, or do you feel like that it's just an unintentional side effect of an ideology?
I definitely think it is intentional when you have the superintendent of education being the person to decide what instructional materials you can or cannot have in a classroom, in any given classroom. Um, and at that, one whose qualifications lack significantly in any kind of teaching experience compared to the teachers that do have those licenses.
Mhm.
Um, it is intentional. And we've known this has been intentional, Todd. We've watched it since the 80s. We've been keeping an eye on it. As we saw A Nation at Risk unfold and No Child Left Behind.
Mhm.
Um, it is always the opportunity, in just my observation, to maximize financial potential.
Yep.
Um, and if you really think about that, when we say maximize financial potential, let's talk about for profit charter schools.
Right.
Let's talk about vouchers, um, of which in some cities, including Cleveland, if I'm not mistaken, the taxes have increased so significantly to fund those vouchers. So then the question is, where will South Carolina find all that additional funding if leadership is continuously providing tax cuts and breaks, as they so claim? Um, it is most definitely intentional because, and this is just my 2 cents and just from what I've read, um, hedge fund investors had their eyes on the healthcare field about
Mhm.
50 years ago, right? Um, they now have their eyes, and they've had their eyes on education because it is a huge, huge money making,
Right.
profitable business, depending on where you are on the spectrum with it, right?
Right. So then, yeah. So this is what I hope folks will listen to, is follow the money, and understand that this is the what you do is you don't go to the public and say, hey, what we want to do is set up a public education system similar to our healthcare system, where you're going to pay actually out of pocket, or you're going to have to pay premiums if you want higher quality education. We're not going to do this publicly funded thing anymore, because we feel like the free market will drive competition and create better schools. What you have to do is use culture wars to get people to undermine people's trust in public education. So then it becomes like, oh, your teachers, they're indoctrinating kids, they're grooming kids. The schools are just liberal bastions, and they're brainwashing your kids, and they're failing. We have these standardized tests, and they're failing, and then the most cynical part of the strategy is to then say, so what we need to do is use private school vouchers because the poor children need these vouchers to get out of their failing public schools, when we know that that's not how vouchers end up working, and we know that ultimately the system that they're moving to will actually harm children in poverty the most. Though the most vulnerable populations will be hurt the most, because we know that like folks who use vouchers, who maybe can afford a little bit of tuition, and maybe who can drive their kids to the private school and have the transportation, don't need the free lunch or free breakfast, then those kids get left behind in whatever public option there is left over, when you've already spent a ton of the money, gutted the public option, sent all that money to the private sector. That's where you have a lot of these kids with special needs, kids are in poverty, kids whose parents can't drive them to school, kids who need accommodations, things like that. They're left, and the idea that they're framing it, that they're doing it for them, it infuriates me. How do you?
Well, let's talk a little bit about that, because in the past 20 years, I've have watched and followed Senator Larry Grooms very closely, and Grooms has been the pioneer and the key supporter of vouchers specific and focused on students with special needs. I hope the public understands, though, that when you take those funds to private institutions, by law, they are not required to provide any of the accommodations that are listed on IEPs or 504s. And it's not to say that private institutions aren't working to provide those accommodations, but but that simple expectation and requirement is key. And the other part with that, Todd, is, what's also interesting about Senator Grooms and many of the supporters of vouchers is that they're really focused on a specific type of legislation, and it's called ALEC, ALEC.
Yeah.
And it is essentially what we call template legislation, that is specifically designed for lawmakers to use bits and pieces, or to piecemeal new legislation, or to introduce legislation into their own states. And I think another example of subpar legislation is definitely the instructional materials, and specifically what we're talking about in terms of age appropriate materials. I appreciate Josh Malkin educating me last night, but at a panel discussion, he shared the fact that, the law is crafted in such a way that the legislation specific to age appropriate content was even pulled in such a manner from a general piece of legislation, that it standing by itself is so vague, that it really does such a disservice to the people of South Carolina. And so, with all that being said, vouchers have been 20 years in the making in South Carolina, if people haven't noticed by now. And we continue to say there's basic things that public schools offer and can offer and do offer, that once those dollars get tied to vouchers, there's no oversight or management, or even, unlike in public schools where we use data to drive our decisions, or so we say, there's no measurement of progress or success that's
Right.
even
Sorry,
equals to what that even equals to what public school educators are doing, right?
That's right, and that undermines, I heard throughout all my career that, this we have to be responsible. The conservative things, we have to be responsible with taxpayer money. We have to make sure that it's being
Mm.
effectively used, and then you want to give it to a private school, and then you don't even want to have any kind of measurement to determine whether or not that money's being used properly. My personal philosophy is I don't like the way we measure success in schools. I think there's got to be a better way to do it than a bubble and test. So I don't want to inflict that onto anybody else. But this idea that there's not going to be any kind of measurement, that there's no oversight, no real accountability mechanism put into these vouchers. You can just give them away to and do whatever you want to with them. I've made the analogy that it's like if I went to my public library and they don't have a book that I want to read, and I tell them, I need you out of your budget to give me a $50 gift card to go to Barnes and Noble to buy the book that I want. And then they give it to me, and I don't have to give them a receipt. I don't have to tell them what I can go and buy. I can go to the cafe and get a brownie. I can go get like a Mad magazine. I can go get a Bible. I can go get whatever I want, and I don't even have to necessarily get the book. I have this gift card, and it's just, I mean, I think everybody sees how ludicrous it would be for the public library to give money out of its budget to send me to Barnes and Noble. If I don't find the book that I like there, I can say, hey, I'd like to request this book. Can you get that? But there should be no obligation on the part of the state to fund my desire to go to Barnes and Noble to get something that isn't at the public library. And I think most people see that. Most people see the logic in that. But I think that there's been such a successful anti-teacher, anti-public school campaign that
Mhm.
people used to be very protective of public schools and very respectful about the profession and about teachers, and now we've seen such an undermining of that I think that's what's allowing these voucher schemes to start working.
Well, but also keep in mind too, Todd. It's Let's think about teacher retention, recruitment, teacher turnover. Um, there are so many great educators and teachers out there.
Right.
Um, but but I think we also need to remember as well is that we also have educators and teachers now who are saying, I can go elsewhere
Yes.
and I can get paid more and I can get treated better. And I can go to the restroom whenever I want or when I need to. Um, and, I want to take a minute just to share just a recent example of this. BCEA president, Kat Lowe, she makes it, she is routinely attending our Berkeley County School Board meetings and speaking to the shortages and the concerns that teachers and members are sharing. Um, it almost feels like sometimes that we have hit this point where uh, our leaders have become numb to
Yeah.
the frustration, the sacrifice, the suffering that our educators are making every day.
No.
And when I say numb, I also think about my last visit to the State House. When Senator Greg Hembry, sitting in a room full of educators on lobby day, essentially was giving us a lecture on how we should be sharing and communicating our profession to the public because he overheard a young lady talking about how she was so upset that she heard her son's teacher talking about how horrible her job was in the grocery store.
Right. That toxic positivity and gaslighting that they do is really, really frustrating. The idea that a teacher like Kat can't say, "Listen, we can't even pee when we need to." We really can't even like take care of our bodily functions. That's how we're being treated. And then that falls on deaf ears, and then you have people saying things like, will just talk positively about your profession. We need to recruit more people into it. And it's like, I can't go to a young person and just say, it's amazing, it's noble, it's wonderful, you'll be respected and you'll be paid well. And, and I used to be able to do that authentically when I was a teacher cadet instructor, recruit people into the profession. And now, like, I don't think, I think there's so many great, I think both of us were drawn into education because there's still so much great about being a teacher. But the environment, like you said, in the past 5 to 10 years has become so toxic. We have so many teachers who are burned out, stressed out, on have mental health issues, physical health issues because of the stress. And the ones that stay, a lot of them are just enduring because they have to. But a lot of people, like you said, there's other opportunities in the economy where you can use the bathroom when you need to. You can get the support that you need. You are respected. You are paid well. You do have an opportunity to grow and and not to be turned around on social media and be called names like indoctrinated, groomer, Marxist, and all these other names. And so I hear what you're saying, and I think we have to, as educators, as veteran educators, stop this idea of like trying to stifle people who are just telling the truth. That's what it's ultimately about. That's what Kat did at the school board meeting. It's just like we need to share our truth, not what a senator wants us to tell about a profession or somebody else who wants to shine up the toxicity.
And and the one thing out of many trainings that I've done over the years is stories matter.
Yeah.
Um, Everybody's stories matter, and to and as an elected official, as a representative of the people, um, it is your duty to listen to the stories of your
Right.
constituents. They matter. Um, I think it is shameful and disrespectful to have our state superintendent of education criticize our own students for speaking in support of what they believed was right.
Right.
Um, you know, so much to say, Todd. Um, but I think that despite all of that, um, there are still so many of us that love and care for
Hmm.
kids that we do make those sacrifices and we do take those hits for the team. And I can think of about 10 people, 12 people right now who are doing that daily. And I don't know what the classroom will look like in the next 5 or 10 years, for my daughter, for my
Right.
son, for their children. But I would hope anywhere that they go to have any kind of educational experience or any learning experience, that there is an adult human being that sees them as a human being and cares for them enough to say, you know, I'll do what it takes to help. I'll do what it takes to help you
Hmm.
as best as I can and within my ability.
Right.
Um, what parent does not want a champion for their children? Um, and it is very disheartening at times to have those experiences, to hear parents within our own communities say that that we are indoctrinating, that we are trying to convert
Yeah.
to whatever. Um, I think that one thing that people, in general, as we continue with life, is that if the less critical we become, or the less we question what's around us and in front of us and being said to us and shared with us, then I think that we're in for some trouble. And unfortunately, I'm seeing more of this today. Because of how easy it seems to be able to convince people, whether it's a fallacy,
Mm.
whether it's a falsified fact, whatever you want to call it. Um, but in talking about those culture wars, let's take it at the local level, Todd. I'd love to share what's been happening in Berkeley County with you in terms of culture wars. So, you know, I taught at Cane Bay High School until January of this year. And then last year, it was about springtime last year, attending a school board meeting, and a parent stood up and spoke about a book in which her child read, and she was absolutely appalled at the graphic content of this text. Come to find out, that parent never contacted the teacher to simply ask about the book and to simply raise the question to say, I have a problem with this. That didn't happen until nearly 2 months later, after the text had already been read and studied. And that same parent then went on to challenge 93 books in Berkeley County. And what's problematic with that, Todd, is you can challenge any material, but when you list under student name or child's name every child in Berkeley County schools, you are now inadvertently speaking for me as a parent.
Right. Exactly.
And I did not put my name on that form. A huge waste of our Berkeley County School District dollars, a huge waste of the time and energy that our employees were, to a degree, mandated to serve on committees. And about halfway through the series of committees, they were canceled. And I share all that to say that imagine what we could have done had we not spent that time and energy on that one issue that eventually got dropped and dismissed.
Right. Yeah, I think this is what it is. It's like, you know, the same thing with CRT. It's these boogeymen that they want folks to chase after, thinking that they're, you know, giving people in the community, and it's not even a lot of people. It's just a handful of people in communities. This feeling that they're doing something important, that they're saving kids from indoctrination or saving kids from certain types of content or whatever. Saving kids from liberal Marxists that are trying to, you know, do some type of Maoist revolution in America. It's.
But can I ask this, Todd?
Yeah.
If you're saving kids from this inappropriate content, why go on public comments and read out the explicit content verbatim?
Yeah. Somebody asked a question. Sean said, "Does Berkeley County have opt-out forms for Charleston, like Charleston does?"
I believe so, but if they do, that's a really great question, because while the instructional materials policy has passed, there's been very little, if any, guidance on that part and on that end.
Yeah, I don't think, you know, it's really interesting. One of the things I posted was, after Ellen won and got into office, I was like, wow, look how quickly CRT went away. She was really quick about being able to get rid of that. You know, it's like that was a huge campaign issue when she ran in 2022, right? This whole idea of CRT. And then have you heard about it, like, since she's been in office? And the other thing, like you mentioned earlier, if CRT is in, if it were, it's not, but if it were, you've had a Republican superintendent of education, governor, state house for 20 years. So who's responsible for it being there that long? So it's like it's just a boogeyman. It's manufactured BS to create outrage, to get people to be anti-public school, so that when they say, we'll send your kid then to a private school and we'll give you a coupon for it, then you're like, okay, well, yeah, when I need my kid to go where the school aligns with my values, you know, they're not trying to get them to be, you know, liberal or whatever.
While also allowing for the public schools to move more and more into disarray.
Right.
And so to go back to your question,
like
it is intentional.
Yes, and good people like you and a lot of other great teachers decide to leave the profession because it's just become so toxic for them. that they're choosing themselves and their families and their own health, their own mental health over the profession. And I have this guilt because I have teacher cadets who I've recruited into the profession, and they're like, Mr. Scholl, why did you get me into this? And now I feel they're 10, 15 years into the profession now, and they're frustrated. They're English teachers frustrated with this idea. I can't even teach a novel now. You took To Kill a Mockingbird out of my curriculum. I mean, and I don't even get the like. I thought I would at least be respected. I thought at least that I knew I wasn't going to get paid super well, but I thought I would at least be respected. And now I have to worry about, if I have a certain book on my shelf and somebody finds out about it, they're going to dox me. They're going to call me out on social media and make it seem like I'm a pedophile. And I mean, and it's an intentional degradation and destruction of public schools. And the best way to do that is to attack teachers, because they're the foundation of a great school system. So if we can get rid of the good teachers and we can stress them out and stress out the system, that's the bedrock. That's the bedrock that upon which the whole system lies. And destroy that, you destroy the system, then you can swoop in and privatize it, give it over to the free market, which is what this is all about. It's all about the money. It's all about, like you said earlier, making money.
Well,
Someone wants to profit off of this, and they see this cash cow, and they don't have access to it. So this is their strategy to get access.
well, when Ben Navarro can spend more time in Colombia lobbying for his work with Meeting Street Schools versus the teacher who is bound by a contract to work classroom and contract hours, it's kind of hard for that teacher during
Right.
the legislative season, right, to get up there and to speak his or her piece. They do it anyway. But you have, individuals, investors, businessmen, such as Mr. Navarro, who's given multiple testimonies in Colombia. And the other thing too with that, Todd, is, I'll take it a little step further in the fact that, when we think about great societies, and, one of the first attacks on a great society are typically the educated.
Right.
Typically the the what's viewed as elitist, or I don't know. And so I think about those kind of pieces of history, and looking at, granularly where we are, and kind of looking down at our level. And I just, again, kind of sit and observe and ask, like,
Yeah.
because we are a nation of brilliant people.
Yeah.
We really are. But with all of this conversation, we knowingly, and we recognize the fact that we are very divisive.
Yeah, very. And subject to sort of superstitious conspiratorial thinking. It's really easy to manipulate people through fear. When you get people believing a lie, you say the lie enough to where enough people believe it, it gains traction, and that's all you really need to really destroy something. And the lies that have been perpetrated against public schools, and the conflation of simply having an LGBTQ book with grooming, or talking about historical racism is some form of you're being divisive. If I talk about the Tulsa massacre or something like that, you're just being divisive and making white people feel guilty. It's an old strategy, and Mel Moore talked about the I think it was called the Bacon Rebellion, where white indentured servants and enslaved Africans got together to revolt against the slave masters, and the slave masters realized there's got to be something, we got to do something about it. So what we have to do is pit these two people against each other, and this is what's being done by the moneyed interests. Is I can't win this thing. I can't win the free market argument. I can't get enough people to sort of vote against their best interests. So what I have to do is concoct a culture war issue, which is they're trying to groom your kids. There's all this sexual content. They're Marxists. You do all of that, and you gin up enough anger, particularly with white moderates and Republicans, and then you have enough people voting your way to get through the legislation and schemes that you're looking for to so that folks can profit. And um, it's a repeated strategy, and I wish people would wake up and sort of see it. It's just really hard to break through once somebody has it in their mind, and they think that they're actually helping kids and protecting kids. Um, it's really hard to break through that. I've seen so many bumper stickers and things and so many posts on social media and trying to break through that programming. They're very effective at that. Um, I want to thank you. And as we leave, one of the things that you said was you came from this sort of warrior culture, and I hope that the way that you go to battle for educators, that you've consistently done. I hope that other people see that and are inspired by that, and hear your story tonight, and that more of our educators will stand up and have the courage to stand up, because this is a war, and it's one that we have to win on behalf of our students. And I just want to thank you for the advocacy and the battles that you fought. So thank you.
Well, I appreciate that, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here, Todd. And just I think the most important takeaway that I want people to remember is that tomorrow, just check on your teachers,
Yeah.
check on your faculties and staff, and just say, hey, how's it going? And if you're a parent, if you're a friend, if you're a church member, if you play cards with them or pickleball, check in on them and just ask them, what could I do to help you? How can I support you? Because right now they need you. They really do.
Yeah, they're really hurting. Thank you, Mev. I appreciate your time, and let's do it again sometime.
Definitely. Thank you, Todd.
Take care. All right, everybody. That was Mev McIntosh. Really appreciate her time tonight. Hope you enjoyed that conversation that we had. I just want to remind everybody that if you're just tuning in and you want to see the full length interview, we'll be posting it to YouTube, and you can just rewind this if you're on Facebook. And it will also be on the CEWL website at CEWL.us, probably by the end of the week, probably by Thursday or Friday. Also want to remind you, if you are interested in the things we talked about and fighting against vouchers, fighting against book bans, fighting against this whole PragerU nonsense, we have a movement, and it's called the South Carolina Education Association. We are the state affiliate of the National Education Association. We proudly stand behind our values. We proudly stand up to all of this stuff that's going on to try to destroy public schools, to try to hurt public school educators. And we want to stand up together in solidarity. And you can do that by joining our movement at jointhescea.org. I would like to just talk about a few things we have coming up. One thing that we have going on every Friday, if you want to, and this is, look, we know this is not going to change the world overnight, but this is a way to that it symbolizes your solidarity with the things that we're talking about. We're standing up for our public schools, for our public school educators. Every Friday, wear black. So you just wear black to school, wear black. You don't have to even be a teacher. You can be a student, a community member. Anyone can wear black on Fridays, take a picture or shoot a video, post it to social media with the hashtag Black Friday SC. That's Black Friday SC. And we just want to see this ocean of folks dressed in black on Friday. So if you'll consider doing that, we'd appreciate it, and spread the word on that. Coming up on Thursday, we have the second season of Cool Beans starting. That's Angelica McDonald, Dr. Marcella Weinsteiner, and myself. We'll be talking about safe boundaries with students. And this particular show is designed specifically for early career educators. So if you know folks in the first 5 years of their career, we're going to be doing a regular series here throughout this whole school year. This one's on Thursday at 6 o'clock. A few other things we have coming up in October. Jaleesa White's going to be talking about mindfulness on October 8th from 7 to 8 o'clock. We also have Jaheim President on October 22nd. He's an early career educator talking about his first year of teaching. We have on October 24th, Audrey Kalianos talking about gut health and anxiety. Fascinating information. We also have, for early career educators, our teacher induction symposium coming up November 9th from 10 to 3:30. You can go to the CEWL website, just look at the top under induction, then click symposium, or just go to CEWL.us/symposium. The registration's there. If you know any teacher in the first 5 years, make sure that they know about our induction supports. We also have something, you don't even have to leave the comfort of your own living room or classroom. You can just go online to receive CEWL coaching. This is free. It's online. It's one-to-one support for induction educators. Any teacher in South Carolina, they don't have to be a member of the SCEA. Any teacher can do this Tuesday and Thursday evenings from 6 to 8 o'clock. You log on at CEWL.us/coaching, and then you'll be put into a Zoom breakout room with either Angie, Stephanie, or Marcella. 3 amazing educators who will answer your questions, give you advice, and just give you some sort of unbiased, non-threatening support. And then the other thing we have coming up is Erica Ayers talking about supporting student health. That's going to be on November 6th at 7 o'clock. And I just want to give a shout out to Alex Del Castillo. Alex is an early career educator here in Horry County. He was the Horry County Teacher Rookie of the Year a few years ago. And he's been really supporting our work over on TikTok and Instagram. He's been kind of putting together all the content. So if you haven't already connected with the SCEA over on TikTok or Instagram, make sure you go over there, search for the SCEA. And one of the things he does is CEWL yoga, and all that's on the CEWL website as well. If you've ever wondered what would it be like to try yoga out, and why should I try that out? We offer that free. He does those sessions every Wednesday night. They're about 15 minutes long. They're live, and then we post them on our website. And for me, yoga's been really, really great. It's a really great way to exercise, a great way to deal with stress, a great way to sort of go inside and investigate what's going on in there and sort of work through some stuff. So I want to encourage everybody to give that a shot. So that's everything I have to promote. I want to thank everybody who tuned in tonight. Ivy says she's definitely sending a message. She'd love to help. I want to thank Sean. I want to thank Kat Lowe, or is it Lau? I now I'm confused because I saw a video the other day. I'm not sure. Kat, you're gonna have to let me know if it's Lau or Lowe. Joy Brown, I want to thank you. Swati, Kat Crumpler, thank you for tuning in, and everybody who tuned in to tonight's live stream. Really appreciate it, and also thanks again to Mev McIntosh for her time. We'll see you Thursday at 6 o'clock for the second season of Cool Beans. Until then, have a wonderful evening, and go get it.
Together we flow. Be cool, every teacher, every school. Be cool, every teacher, every school. Be cool, every teacher, every school.